ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to KILT's Alexander Bennett Show. Your chance to talk back to the talk man. This is the program that Houston talks to and about. The opinions expressed are not necessarily those of the client, the station, or the moderator, and are sometimes offered to stimulate discussion on topics of vital interest to the public. He's here, live and in person. The talk of Houston, the man you love to hate, Alexander Bennett. And now, here's Alex.
Good evening, Houston. This is Alex Bennett with a program of talk and discussion, a forum of free thought and ideas. Our telephone number, do not call it yet. In fact, we have a full set of lines tonight due to our discussion. Jackson 42911, when you wish to call in, do so on that line. Jackson 42911. Tonight we have a discussion in mind, our second guest of the week, and we will be discussing ESP, extrasensory perception. We ask that no teens call, as is our weekday policy, and we also ask as well that you be prepared to turn down your radio as soon as you hear us answer the telephone. There is a 7-second delay, and this will have a tendency to confuse you. Heaven knows some of you are confused enough. Nothing really to open the show with tonight, except that we do have a special guest, and we will get to our special guest in our discussion and performance of extrasensory perception.
Arthritis strikes people of all ages, even teenagers and children. KILT suggests you get reliable facts in the free booklet, Today's Facts About Arthritis. Write Arthritis, Box 369, Houston, Texas.
Sunday, June 4th, the KILT End of School Show presents the fabulous Pozo Seco Singers.
Loving you, girl.
It's a summer shower of stars, Sunday, June 4th in the Sam Houston Coliseum. Tickets are only $1.50 per seat for either show, 3 and 8 p.m., with all proceeds going to the Farm and Ranch Club of Houston. Make your plans now to see the Pozo Seco Singers, along with the Jefferson Airplane, at the KILT End of School Show, Sunday, June 4th at the Coliseum.
I'd like to remind you that musical instruments will be furnished by Red Novak of H&H Music Company. And KILT Good Timer Fashions is supplied by Mr. Sammy's Fashions for Men at 913 Travis. I went down yesterday and was fitted for my tux. I'd like to mention first that I've got big news from Texas's oldest and largest health centers chain. You know who that is? The Ace Reich and Silhouette Spas. And this week only, the first 25 who call or come by can have a custom-designed program for as little as, are you ready for this? $1.50 per week. That's right, $1.50 per week. $150 is all you need to invest in a new thrilling way of life. Now, I have a telephone number for you to call, and I want you to call this number because the guy out there is waiting to hear from you tonight. His name is Ron Calhoun. He phoned me up expressly before the program and told me not to call him Ronnie. So call Ron Calhoun and say, "Hi, Ronnie. The number is UN15547, and he can arrange for you to have that $1.50 a week treatment. They've only got a few left, and I have done wonders with my very own body. I have lost about 10 pounds so far and shed about 3 or 4 inches from my waist. And I think maybe you ought to do the same. This is the season when we all have a tendency to get a little pudgy. It's summertime, eat a lot, and we sometimes don't get enough exercise. The number to call Ron Calhoun at UN15547. All my lines are filled right now, so give him a call now. UN15547, UN15547. He's out in Bel Air, UN15547. About 2 months ago, we had a big argument on this program. I got into an argument with some women about Jean Dixon, who I claim is a very talkative woman who would do the world better by not mentioning her prophecy simply because it tends to scare people and cause these things to happen. For instance, if you tell someone You are going to fall off a ladder within the next week and break your back. The next time that person climbs a ladder, this is going to be in their subconscious, and they are going to slip and fall. Well, that's prophecy. And I suppose it does come under the heading of ESP, which is extrasensory perception. And we have an expert in extrasensory perception. His name is Dr. Gilbert N. Holloway, and he comes to us from Miami, and now you're going to be in New Mexico very shortly, aren't you, Doctor?
That's right, Alex. Nice to be back in Houston again and on your program for the first time.
What exactly is ESP? Let's have a good definition to start the whole program off tonight.
All right, it's not a government agency.
Not a president.
Extrasensory perception, as I understand it, and I've been in the field since I was 9 years of age, is the capacity of the deeper mind, and I like to use the Jungian term, the superconscious mind, to gain information or knowledge beyond the ordinary reach of the senses. The most common form of ESP is telepathy, or the capacity of mind to touch mind at a distance without any ordinary physical means of communication. When this contact mind to mind, like radio, becomes visual, like television, is called clairvoyance, or inner seeing. The most popular form of ESP is prophecy, which you just mentioned. Now, not all prophecies are dire ones. Some of them are very good, you see, and all the way in between. But prophecy, there's an enormous hunger. And one reason for the tremendous popularity of Jean Dixon is, first of all, that she is a wealthy person. She's influential. She has, through her husband and others, enormously influential connections in Washington, D.C., and she has a very bright woman reporter as her principal agent, Ruth Montgomery, with whom I was on television a week ago in Chicago. But nonetheless, prophecy, even in our time, I was interviewed by a local newspaper a couple of days ago. Perhaps you saw the article in today's paper.
Yes.
And the reporter said, "Now, Doc, don't tell us good things. What's going to happen? It'll stir the world, you see." Well, so I try to tell them some of the things that I see coming. And because we do live in a dangerous time, Alex, and because there are many ominous things on the horizon, some of these prophecies are pretty tough. But as we go into this tonight, I'll give some good prophecies also, so that people will sleep well and see the positive side of this, shall we say.
All right, now, so far as prophecy is concerned, though, I found that a lot of times a person will prophesize, and when that thing comes true, people will automatically say, he prophesized it. But those things that don't come true, people have a tendency to forget, and therefore they say this person has a terrific gift of prophecy.
Well, you have to remember that all honest ESP is experimental, is subject to error. Anyone who is 100% accurate all the time, there's something suspect there, because the mortal mind or the conscious mind gets involved. Theoretically, if an inner mind, if a person in the superconscious can touch the universal mind, he would be always accurate. But I have found in almost 12 years in radio and television and many other years in the field that if I can average out around 80 to 90%, as I usually can, I'm doing fine, doing well. But I do make mistakes, including in prophecy. But the batting average is much higher than chance. It is said that chance in ESP would run 15 to 25%, just good guessing, good observation possibly. From, say, 20 to 50% you're getting in the realm of ESP, and beyond 50% you're way out in it.
All right. Something happened to me a week ago on this program. I did not mention it. I have not mentioned it until tonight, simply because I wanted to hold it off till you got here. But about last Tuesday, somebody phoned me up, and we got to talking about prophecy and about Jean Dixon. We got on this thing again. And really, I think she's a very boring subject, because I don't know, when she said there was going to be a big tragedy in Houston, Texas on a certain Saturday, and Saturday came and Saturday went, and everybody was holding on to their chairs, and something could have happened simply because everybody was so keyed up. But last Tuesday, just in rambling off of my conversation, I said, all right, I'm going to say there's going to be a big explosion in downtown Cincinnati on Saturday. Now, are you going to believe me? And she said, no. Last Saturday in Cincinnati, downtown, there was a large explosion.
And the cable broke across the river, and looting began.
Do I have the gift of prophecy?
Perhaps you do. Yeah, you're a sensitive man. You wouldn't be in radio. Maybe you have it in spite of yourself. If you relax and let your superconscious mind operate, you could.
A month and a half ago, I said that I was flying back home on a certain airline. Well, I'll say which airline it was. It was Delta, from San Francisco. And I said to myself, I just feel there's going to be a tragedy with Delta Airlines. And the next day, that Delta airline crashed into a hotel in New Orleans. Now,
Yes, with all
is this
those-
just that a person remembers those things which he might have had a premonition about?
See, premonition or hunch or intuition is a form of prophecy. It's an awareness of a close event in time. And you see, our listeners, and the thousands of our listeners here tonight, I would presume that at least half of them have had premonitions, have had hunches and feelings. And, of course, in a materialistic world as we live in, and with a lot of skepticism and unbelief, they tend to deny this or poo-poo it. Nonetheless, it's there. And by the way, here's an interesting fact about ESP, as I've come to experience it. You see, the superconscious mind will only function, Alan, in an atmosphere. Pardon?
Alex.
Excuse me. Pardon me. You know, you look like Alan in Cleveland. Excuse me, Alex. It only functions in an atmosphere of confidence, faith, and belief. Intense skepticism will attenuate prophecy and any other ESP powers. For instance, I'm going to work you later this evening after we talk a while. Some people will call in, and I'm going to read for them. Now, if I sat here, if I really doubted that I could do this, I'd fall flat on my face. But because I have confidence, because I've been doing this for years, know how this operates, and approach it in that way, I can get results. Even though I know this before I start, and because I know it, and because I have confidence, it works, because the superconscious mind is that way.
Right, a few months ago I had a run-in with a gentleman by the name of Peter Herkos. Are you familiar with Peter
I know
Herkos?
Herkos. In fact, I was on television with him in Miami for 13 weeks in '59 in a show sponsored by Henry Belk.
What do you think of his gift?
I think that Peter Herkos has ability. Frankly, he has ability. He was overplayed. He's had too many managers, and they excessively touted him. You know what I mean? They built him too
Well,
high.
this way, what I found with him is I think he's the greatest double talk artist in the business. I think he uses the accent that he has as a benefit to him because he can take back some of the things that he has said. Like he said to me, I don't see a ring on your finger, but I see you married. All right.
Well, that's
I'm
true.
married.
You don't have a ring on, you're married.
Right. But if I had said, no, I'm not married, he said, that's right, but I see you married. And then he's prophesied. So he has an out either way. And I noticed this. He described my wife as having blonde hair, being very well endowed, and a few other things. And I said, please don't say that over the radio, because when I do take my wife out, they're going to think I'm with a strange woman.
Your wife
because it was completely unlike my wife, but I didn't have the nerve to tell the guy he was wrong.
She has brown hair and is an attractive woman. What's wrong with that?
Right, but what I'm saying is his description of her
I see. His
was
detailed
so
description.
completely wrong. He
All
was
right.
99% wrong on
All
everything.
right. So Herkos missed that. So maybe he had a bad evening. We do. Even sometimes.
But
You're not the same all the time in your program here, are you?
Well, don't you?
Or are you?
Well,
You know what I mean. All art, and ESP is an art. It's not a science. It's an art. I'm somewhat
well, what I'm
defending
saying
Herkos.
is, though, don't you work sometimes in generalities?
Of course. That is to say, as you'll find out tonight, as you're zeroing in, so to speak, as I come in contact with people on this program tonight, as I start to go into the contact, I see colors, but then as I come into the contact, particularly as I'm close in, I can pick up specific things. I can feel sometimes if a person's right foot is hurting them, or if they maybe have a bruise on the right hand or the knuckle, third knuckle, and so on. I will try tonight to get as many specifics as possible, and naturally those are the most evidential
For
things.
instance, say you get an 11-year-old kid who you would be reading. It would be very safe to say you've had a recent illness, because young kids do go through all the gamut of illnesses and so on. I mean, generalizations like this.
Well, there's some of that. Now, I'm going to do something else tonight later on, too, as our time may permit. I've done quite a bit of radio and TV experimentation in a phase of ESP, Alex, called a psychic projection, where people, and they can do it, go given a name and address in a distant place, anywhere in the world, and I will endeavor to go there in the spirit and describe that person and place. And I've done that successfully many times.
We'll try and do this tonight,
later
Paul?
tonight. I'll be glad to. Incidentally, we didn't quite finish your earlier question to me. I was talking about prophecy as the most popular phase. Probably the most utilitarian phase of ESP is in the field of mental or psychic or spiritual healing. And this is very interesting. Here again, there are those who pretend this and so on, and yet the capacity of mind or spirit or consciousness to heal the body is a fact, and is very fascinating, and is increasingly popular, and it does work, and I've been studying that for 30 years.
Well, do you preclude the use of doctors?
Not at all. No. Oh,
Because I've always believed that, of course, a doctor can cure 50% of it. The other 50% has to be the person's desire to be cured and to be well. But I don't go along. In fact, I got into a big argument one night on faith healing on the program. I didn't believe that some faith healers who said, all right, now that you've left here, you're all right. We're doing actually a service to their people. Now, they may have given them the spirit to fight off whatever disease they have, but they should also have medical help as well.
There are three levels of healing, as I understand it, and I've seen it for years. There's a level of what we might call spiritual healing. There's a level of natural healing, which includes diet, chiropractic adjustment, exercise, all the natural things. And there's the level of the drug, medical, surgical approach. Now, they all have their place. They certainly do. And I don't criticize other phases of healing which I'm not expert. But there's a tendency in our time, and I think for the medical field to become so overwhelmingly powerful, especially exercising the police power, that in some areas it's difficult for natural healers and spiritual healers even to operate at all, which I think is regrettable. The higher a person's consciousness, the higher their development as a human being, the more they respond to the spiritual, mental, and natural means. But there are cases, of course, and there are many cases in which the regular medical approach is entirely desirable. Well, let's put it this way. If a person will not respond to spiritual or natural healing, then he's going to require medical treatment. And I do not take an extremist view. There are some in this field who do. They try to eliminate all doctors, which I think can be unfortunate. Some people die because they need a doctor, of course.
You are a PhD.
Yes.
Correct? That's where the doctor...
I'm a doctor of divinity and philosophy. I'm a graduate of Stanford. I'm a member of the class of 36.
Columbia University as well, right?
Yes, and at 4 years graduate study at Columbia. I was a teaching fellow at Columbia from 1937 to 1940.
What was your language for your PhD?
I have German and French and Spanish.
Very good.
Latin.
Very good. Mm-hmm. All right. Prophecy. The future.
By the way, may I speak of San Francisco?
Yes.
He
knows I'm from San Francisco, ladies and gentlemen. He didn't see that.
That's right. Well, I want to relate that to our present discussion. One of the most remarkable prophet of the first half of this century was a man named Edgar Casey, of whom you perhaps have discussed in this program. Are you aware of him? Edgar Casey.
Yes.
Jess Stern wrote a book about him called Edgar Casey, the Sleeping Prophet. Casey was a remarkable clairvoyant and prophet and ESP sensitive. He passed away in 1945. He has many students in this area, probably many who are listening tonight. Anyway, Casey had some rather dire prophecies along with some very good things, but he did at one time, I'm relating this to you in San Francisco. You won't like this, but I'm going to say it. Casey was in a very deep trance one time, and someone asked him about the future, and he was talking about it. He said, by the way, I'm looking toward the end of the century, and he said, there are 3 cities that I don't see. They're not there anymore. And they were New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. And perhaps you're aware of this, too, speaking of prophecy, that not only geologists, but almost all psychics on the coast of California and elsewhere in the country are working against. California is under a very grave situation. Now, this is not only true geologically and prophetically as well. The San Andreas Fault, which runs through San Francisco, as you know, and down through the peninsula, and almost destroyed Stanford in 1906.
I used to go out to a place out in Marin County across the bay from San Francisco and stand on the San Andreas Fault and dare it to rumble.
Well, I pray that it won't, because this time, if it were to hit a popular area, it could be a very bad quake. But it's interesting to know that there is a tremendous convergence or confluence of prophecy, and has been now for about 3 years, bearing upon California, and especially upon San Francisco and Los Angeles. So you better pray, my friend, because they're due for a very rough shake out there, and I hope it won't come, because I have relatives and 2 of my sons are there, and it's a wonderful country. I lived 25 years in California, but still, California is under, shall I say, the prophetic gun at this very moment.
There is going to be an earthquake.
I hope not. Now, I agree with what you said earlier. The constant, shall I say, repetition of negative prophecies, human suggestibility being what it is, tends to bring it about. Therefore, you have to handle negatives very carefully.
Nature doesn't listen to human beings.
Well, no, wait a minute. Occultism says it does. There's one of the ancient axioms is nature follows man. The collective consciousness of mankind, Alex, may influence nature in subtle ways. Now, that's very debatable, but in occult science, this is a proposition.
Well, I stood on top of the San Andreas Fault and dared it to do something.
Well, you just weren't enough there. Maybe you weren't praying hard enough. But seriously, there isn't a proposition. In fact, the axiom is nature follows man. And Casey mentioned this, that you see, let's put it this way, 1/2 the people in the world today are believing a lie. There's vastly propagandized negative consciousness, error, lies, hate, etc. Now this arises, shall I say, put it metaphorically, as a cloud, maybe as a stench in the nostril of the Creator, and this is not good for the stability of this planet in any way, even possibly geologically.
All right, on prophecy, what are some of the things you see in the future?
All right, the good ones first.
Let's take the good ones.
And then people can turn off the radio after I finish the good ones. Well, they won't. I'm kidding. Seriously, I have been 31 years a metaphysical teacher, philosopher, worker in these fields. I began my public career in 1936. And I have been studying, and I graduated in political and social science at Stanford, and in education, philosophy, and religion at Columbia. And I've been a close student of the world scene all these years. I wrote a theses about it and so on. Anyway, on the good side, I have never seen in my 30 years of public work, Alex, excuse me for calling you Alan, you look like Alan Drake. That's it, Alan Drake of NBC Cleveland. You heard of him?
He's great at ESP, but he's got a lousy memory.
No, I have a good one. I have association. No, I've got it. No, I can't.
I'm kidding.
I can't accept that. See, now, if I believe that, it would impair my memory. I have perfect memory.
Oh, I see.
Well, that's a little metaphysics, a little byplay. Anyway, where was I?
You were going to talk about the good thing.
Yes. Now, I've never seen a condition like this in which people are so receptive to ESP, shall I say, higher mental, psychic, ESP phenomena and so on. It's extraordinary. I've broken all records across America this past year on radio and television in public response. We'll get thousands of calls tonight as we go ahead with the program. The people are hungry for this. In other words, what I'm saying is that people are reaching out. They realize there are only three frontiers in the world today. There's the frontier of space, which of course Houston is very much concerned with. There's the ocean. And the third frontier is the depths and the mysteries of the human mind and even the very soul of man. And the hope is that somehow, some way, somebody, in some religion or some scientific research, will find within man himself, within the depths of his own mysterious, deeper mind, the answers. Because if we don't, you see, we are in a tremendous race of destruction. So, what I'm saying is that the positive side is that people all over the world are waking up to this. Among my Catholic friends, the Jewish, Protestant, everywhere you go, white and colored, people are hungry for this. And I prophesy in the next 6 months, the next 18 months, many, many unusual phenomena. There are thousands of people listening to my voice tonight, Alex, who in the next 18 months will themselves have some kind of supernormal phenomena. They'll have visions or experiences or healings or telepathy. Things like this will happen that would not have happened to them 10 years ago, but that will happen now. Also, I prophesy an extraordinary number of spiritual healings of all sorts taking place in different, the Episcopalians and the Jews and all sorts of people will experience this. We live in a time of this. And a time in which people are awakening. There is a tremendous moving of the Spirit in the world today. I'm not speaking in any sectarian way. I'm speaking now in a general and universal sense. This is good news. And then, of course, I just drove 1,150 miles 2 days ago, all the way from Chicago down here. And as I drove through Illinois and Missouri and Arkansas and East Texas, and I could see the bounty of our land, realize how affluent we really are. We have the good news is that we continue in an affluent society. Employment is very good. Conditions are basically good. There are pockets of poverty, of course, but still the basic condition is good. There are also, and I'll say this in the medical plane, I see and I prophesy some unusual medical advances against cancer, heart disease, and respiratory disease this year and next year. I'm impressed and I felt this. The news from Vietnam is disturbing in a way. We're certainly not going to lose there. And we are doing some very good things for the people of Vietnam, whom we can help, and elsewhere. On the other side of the story there, I must now touch a couple of negative things. I have 3 sons of military age. 2 of them have served 3 years in the military already, ages 26, 25, and 23. But I do not see, Alex, any early cessation of the Vietnamese War, as I said in the Houston Post article we printed today. I remember so well the Korean War, as no doubt you do, and it is interesting to note historically it's the only inconclusive war in our history. It ended in stalemate. It isn't over, really. Our adversary, a real adversary in the Korean War, as in Vietnam, is Red China. And you see, we are not finished with them. And there will be no peace in Asia until the communist regime in China is destroyed. I see that. I expect, I don't like to say this, and I'll even put it this way. I hope I'm wrong. But I see communist armies pouring over the border into Vietnam. We're going to have to contend with them as we did in Korea. And I see some kind of very positive affirmative action against them. And this is where Jean Dixon comes in, as you may have in her prophecy. She saw us and prophesied this the first of this year, allied for a time with Russia against China as we were against Hitler. This is very likely.
This particular prophecy is something that a lot of people have stated.
That's logical. That's any sharp mind would see
All right, well,
that.
what you've said so far is actually, I would say, logical. Most of the things...
Well, genuine prophecy ought to be, but
Can you state anything that people have said, oh, no, that'll never happen?
Well, now, this is delicate, but I'll say it. I don't see the president, our president, in the race at all in 68. I don't believe he'd be able to make it. I see Mr. Humphrey as the Democratic nominee, and while he's very able, loquacious, and clever man, I don't think he'll win. I don't see him winning the election of 68. I believe the Republican nominee will win. I believe it will be Romney, Rockefeller, Reagan, or some combination of these three gentlemen, with Nixon as a very strong force there. You see, I'm not a fortune teller, Alex. Let me explain the difference here. Fortune telling tends to be rigid. This is it. Prophecy is a projection of tendency. All authentic prophecy is. For instance, the present projection in the election of 68 is definitely a Republican victory. The Republicans, however, could themselves destroy this by cutting each other down, by internecine family warfare, etc., etc. The President of the United States, Mr. Johnson, and again I speak in a completely nonpartisan way, if he will take better care of himself, if he will heed his good wife's admonitions, can be alive and well and able to conduct the campaign of 68, and if LBJ does, he'll win.
Are you more or less then considering ill health?
Yes, I am. I'll put it this way, and I see this, and I've meditated on this and thought about it. I see and feel, and I've seen this in vision, I see absolutely staggering burdens upon the President of the United States, even in the second half of this year. I believe that he's going to have decisions to make, greater, more difficult, and more far-reaching, possibly, than any president of the United States has ever had to make. And that's a great blow. And putting it, if I may, in a spiritual way, I believe we should pray for him and help him, because he is our president, and he is the leader of our nation, duly elected in this way, and he has problems that simply are almost beyond human endurance.
Do you see anything for Bobby Kennedy?
I'll tell you the truth. He's a clever man. I admire him. I have great admiration for his brother. But I don't. Particularly, he's a force to be reckoned with. I do not ever see him in the presidency. It's possible that they might run him along with Hubert Humphrey. They might run Bobby second place in the ticket. It's thinkable. If his ego permits that, I don't know, or his money or power. I do not see him. As a matter of fact, this is a long term. I believe that in the long term, and in the summing up, I believe his brother Ted Kennedy will achieve more success in the long run than Bobby will. Bobby is, I don't know how to say this, overreached himself in some ways. I see a rather difficult 2-year period ahead for him.
All right. There were quite a few prophecies that you listed in the Houston Post article this morning. Are there any that you did not, that you can mention here on this program?
Well, maybe some of the folks will call in and ask me. Let me see. I've already talked about geological disturbances. Oh yes, here's one that Edgar Casey gave, and I'm going to embellish a bit, or add to it as I have thought about it. Casey predicted that in 1968, a portion of the lost continent of Atlantis would rise off the southern coast of Florida, off the island of Bimini. Now, I have an eastern headquarters in Miami, which I love it very dearly there. It's a beautiful place to live. But you'd be surprised, Alex, how the people in Florida are very much concerned about this 1968 prophecy of Casey, who was an extraordinary visionary. There are 3 schools of thought in Florida. One of them says that, well, when Atlantis rises 100 miles offshore, Florida, nothing will happen here at all. That's one school. The next school says, well, when Atlantis goes up, Florida will rise concomitantly. Then, of course, the inevitable pessimistic school says, when it goes up, it'll go down.
Florida might be attached to Cuba for all we know.
Well, so I don't know. I do feel, I'll tell you this, my wife and I are led. We are led from Miami, which we have a beautiful place there, and it's wonderful weather, best in the country in the wintertime. Nonetheless, we are led, and we're led beginning in 1961. We were given 80 acres of land at Deming, New Mexico. And since attitude, we have 205 acres there, and 2 weeks from Sunday, we are dedicating an international center of metaphysical teaching and spiritual healing in Deming, New Mexico. In other words, we're moving from Miami, whose mean elevation above sea level is 8 feet. We're moving to Deming, New Mexico, whose elevation is 4,400 feet, and that'll be the center of my ministry for the rest of my life through the balance of this century. So I'm led out of Florida. I also, and here's a prophecy I didn't go into because it's on the newspaper, I believe that we're going to have to, and we will, this is a necessity, and I see this being done, we're going to completely obliterate every vestige of communism in Cuba. And it's a shame that this has to be remembered against such a likable man as John F. Kennedy, but the fiasco of the Bay of Pigs, at that time, had there been aggressive action, we could have eliminated communism in Cuba at the cost of a few hundred men. Now, it'll cost several thousand men, and it'll cost the lives of possibly half the people in Cuba. But it'll have to be done, because if we get into real trouble in China or elsewhere, we must reduce Cuba, and we will. And I see great trouble for Castro and his henchmen. But of course, in the years they've been there now, since 1959, they have fortified Cuba, and I am aware that they have missiles, they have weaponry there, they have a lot of surprises for us in Cuba. And I feel it every time I tune in on Cuba. I'm concerned. I don't like the feel of it, and therefore I can see, without being a member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I can see hard decisions that they're going to take in this regard. This also casts a shadow over my beloved state of Florida and its future.
All right, let's take a break here. This is KILT in Houston.
Who's one of the most outspoken men in the music world? Stan Kenton. Listen to Stan's personal views about good sound.
You know, I sometimes hear myself referred to as controversial and somewhat of a maverick in the music world. I guess it's because I've always tried to stick to my convictions. One thing I feel very strongly about is good sound reproduction. Naturally, I listen to music a lot, all kinds, and it really gripes me when it's played on inferior equipment. I feel if a person's going to listen to music, he ought to be serious about it. That's why it's such a pleasure for me to be able to tell you about Craig. Craig tape recorders, car stereos, home tape decks, radios, a full line of products that provide the pleasure, the genuine pleasure of superior sound. Come on now, if you're serious about sound, don't fool around. Insist on the name Craig.
Four sound equipment stores are waiting to show you the full line of handsome Craig tape recorders, radios, and stereo cartridge units, and many more wonderful Craig products. Visit 6609 South Main, 3727 Westheimer, 3118 Smith, and 8343 Long Point and Spring Branch. All types of terms, free parking, open Monday and Thursdays till 8. Our guest is Dr. Gilbert N. Holloway, who is a, do you call yourself a prophet?
No, I call myself a metaphysical teacher, and it says here on my little card, I'm a writer, an ESP-sensitive counselor.
You have a book here called ESP and Your Superconscious by Dr. Gilbert Holloway, internationally famous exponent and demonstrator of ESP.
That's true, and if I may mention this, with your permission, my new book is going well across the country, and Foley's is featuring it, and I'm going to give an autograph party Friday noon from 11:30 to 1:30 at Foley's. And I'll autograph 200 or 300 books at that time, and those who come there and buy a book, I will give them some ESP impressions as I autograph it for them.
Yeah, and what is your, you also have some speaking engagements?
Yes, my principal purpose, Alex, in being in Houston is this. I am giving a series of lectures every night, the next 5 nights, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, in the mezzanine ballroom of the Texas State Hotel. That's downtown at Rusk and Fannin Street. These are public meetings on a free will offering basis. Also, I'll give 3 afternoon meetings. That's tomorrow, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday at 2:30. And I invite people to come. I lecture, I answer questions, and I give an hour of ESP to these people. And we had a fine response. I had a good crowd tonight, and I invite the folks to come.
All right. Now, you mentioned the Chinese communists. They must be wiped out. You mentioned the fact that Johnson will not run. The Republicans will win in 68. You don't give a very happy prophecy for Bobby Kennedy, and you say that we're going to run the communists out of Cuba. Aren't your prophecies more or less rightist prophecies?
I don't know.
I mean, there seems to be a certain tone there.
I'm not. I don't come here as a beatnik, my friend. But
rightists are not beatniks.
You know what I mean? Let's put it this way. I don't like labels. I often kid my friends. I call myself a liberal, conservative liberal. I don't like to be pigeonholed by easy definitions.
Well, I hate
it is
tags too. But what I'm saying is, if you were to go to, say, hear a person of a rightist philosophy speak, he would say these are the very things that should happen, rather than can happen.
I think they will happen. Let me put it this way: I'm a responsible citizen of the United States. I've lived here my life. I have 4 children, 3 grandchildren. I've been a student of affairs. I think the United States is in a very difficult situation. I think that the enemy is communism. In many ways, I believe this too, and I was shocked.
What I'm basically saying, though, isn't some of your philosophy or your prophecy tempered maybe a little bit with political conviction?
Possibly. You see, you cannot eliminate the character and the understanding of any person from what he does, naturally. And the emotions get involved. As I was driving through Arkansas 2 days ago, I heard the news that last week 347 men died in Vietnam, 2,440 were wounded, and so on. I'm deeply affected by this. Of course I am. But also too, Alex, I have been a student of totalitarianism. I wrote a master's thesis 30 years ago on Hitlerism and the totalitarianism of the right. And of course, I've also been a student of communism, of totalitarianism of the left. And I'm a student of the threat of totalitarianism in our country, both right and left. I'm aware of all these things through my years that I've studied political science. But of course, communism is an organized, extremely subtle, powerful effort to destroy us. They're committed to it, and they're working at it. And even this engagement in Vietnam is a clever thing. It's bleeding us. We're committing 600,000 men there. It's a war of attrition. It's exactly the sort of thing we've been warned not to do. Even though the kill ratio, if I may use that horrid term, is 5 to 1, it still isn't good, you see. And of course, let me say this quickly. We also, all prophecy and all prophets, even as I, tend to see the future in terms of a final denouement, shall we say. Let me give it to you very quickly what I see. I see this whole tremendous struggle in the world now eventually winding up in some kind of a tremendous spiritual result. I believe, for instance, in the second coming of Christ, in a metaphysical understanding. I believe that the world is working towards some great spiritual result. I believe that communism as a world force will be totally destroyed. I see this. I don't only believe it, but I even see this. Much of it in my lifetime.
I can see this from a very logical sense. While communism, for many countries who are trying to come out of a cocoon, shall we say, is a fast way towards building an economy, as a final result, it is not desirable.
Well, it isn't even the other.
In other words, the communists themselves right now in the Soviet Union are becoming more and more every day capitalistic.
That's right.
In nature.
I see the removal of the communist regime in Russia. We have many points of affinity with the Russian people.
Are you saying removal or just sort of disbanding because they are becoming more capitalistic?
It'll be partly that, but it'll finally be removed by force too. Mm-hmm. I think so. And even the communist regime in China. Although you have 50 years of indoctrination in Russia, and you have now some 20 years in China. But I see this. In other words, I'm an intellectual. I see these things intellectually, but I also can project them with my deeper mind, and I see them coming to this result. I believe that we're coming towards some kind of a spiritual commonwealth of nations, even as Tennyson said, a parliament of mankind. I see a brotherhood of all peoples, all races, and essentially all religious views coming out of this. And I feel that by the end of the century, Alan, by the end of the century, much of this will be visible. I believe the next 33 years, Alex, excuse me, I get excited, I call you Alex, will see the most extraordinary events that this planet has ever seen. I really do.
I hate to draw a parallel between you and someone else we had on this program. I think you probably know already who I'm talking about, and that was Timothy Leary. Both of you deal... Wait a minute, but there is a certain crossover point.
Well?
Both of you deal in prophecy. Although he is a self-proclaimed prophet. But, for instance, you used the term tonight, tune in. This is one of his favorite sayings.
Oh, but I have a great difference with this man. I heard him on television in Chicago. I don't know his full teaching, but I emphatically reject the use of drugs for any kind of psychic or spiritual. I think that's a grave error, and I'm definitely against it. You don't need them. It's a dangerous thing to do. Let me make this very clear in just a few sentences. To open, in other words, I teach through metaphysics, and essentially a New Testament approach. I teach through meditation, prayer, Shall we say, the opening of the secret doors of the mind. One result of this is ESP, the Bible calls it spiritual gifts. But this must be done in a gradual process on a secure spiritual foundation. Now, to do this, Alex, with drugs, LSD or any other drug, is dangerous because you can force open the secret doors of the mind, all right, but you're not protected. And destructive force, whether you want to call it the demonic or the force of the shadow or plain old-fashioned Bible devil, whatever you want to call this force, moves in, and then you're in trouble. And I emphatically warn our listeners tonight that this is a dangerous way and is not, I reckon, and therefore, you see, I would greatly disagree with the gentleman you mentioned on that point. Now, he has to his general philosophy, I don't know, I haven't heard it, so I don't know.
Well, his general philosophy, if you were to take away the LSD thing, which of course
well, that's his main,
makes Dr. Leary a problem. I'm glad you said what you did about LSD because you probably put it better than I've ever been able to put it. But his basic philosophy is one of spiritual growth.
I'm not aware of that.
Of using the mind, you see. If you were to
What's the wrong approach,
strip off the LSD thing, yes.
Ends and means, my friend, ends and means.
Right, but this is where I see this crossover point between the two of you.
Well, but I would emphatically disagree. Now, again, it's not
almost
fair.
If we were to say that everybody has a good and a bad side, if you and Dr. Leary were one person, he would be the bad side, you would be the good side.
I wouldn't know that. I don't know the gentleman. It's not fair. And here again, in
there's this crossover.
All I heard him do on the biggest show and Cup show, and I was on the week before. He put in a tremendous plug for LSD. He looked out to 2 million viewers in Chicago. Alex,
is that Herb Cups in there?
Yes, that's right. Cup show on it's the biggest night show on television there, as you know, and I've been twice his guest. But listen, Dr. Leary, he looked out and he said, "I emphatically recommend." He said to all. He said, especially you minority groups, Negroes. No, he said, "I want you to start taking LSD." Now that, of course, is dangerous doctrine, and I emphatically reject that. And I tell our minority friend listening, please don't do that because you're going to get into trouble, bad trouble. Many of you don't need that anyway. You need there's a positive spiritual approach that is safe and that is wise, that is supported by both the Old and New Testament teaching.
Is this not a lot like the reaching of the 7th level of consciousness in the Hindu religion?
If you like, yes. I'm a student of yoga. There's an element of Christian yoga in my teaching, yes. The 7th plane, I'm going to talk about that tomorrow night, as a matter of fact. I'm going to talk about heaven tomorrow night. But yes, yoga, you don't find any drugs in yoga, you see. No well-established, authentic, solid spiritual teaching requires or recommends drugs of any kind. And one of the tragedies of our country is the increasing use of drugs of all kinds, marijuana and so on, among the people, especially in San Francisco. I'm going to kid you a little bit, and other places. And this is dangerous, dear friends. Don't do it.
One other question, then we're going to take some calls and have you talk to some of the people. Do you censor yourself in publicizing your prophecies? In other words, you see something that you feel would be detrimental and where Jean Dixon would open her big mouth, you keep it quiet?
I try to be very careful, Alan, and that's why I've survived. Excuse me, isn't that funny? I've got a syndrome.
Great prophesier, lousy memory. That's what I said.
No. Just the association.
If you can convince yourself you've got a good memory, right? Okay.
My apologies. And what may I also say? Please don't. Let me say this in defense of Jean Dixon. I don't know her personally. Never met her. Never heard her speak. But we have mutual friends in Washington, D.C., and she's very highly spoken. She's a very devout Catholic, very sincere person. She's not commercializing her gift, doesn't need to. She's highly thought of in very powerful circles in the government and elsewhere, in religion. And people I know say that her batting average is high, Alex, around 90%, which is very good. So from those who know her well and over the years, may I say that Jean Dixon is very well spoken of, and the comment that I hear of her from discerning people is good. So that I want to just pass that along in passing it. Now, did you ask me a question there? Yes, you did.
Yeah, I asked you.
Censorship. Yes, of course. As a matter of fact, when I tune in on people, I can tune in on the shadow side. But you see, here's the problem. Now, supposing people call in, and I can sense people that may be intoxicated. I can pick up a lot. I could even give a negative reading. This happened to me on television in Oklahoma City a couple of years ago. A very beautiful young woman was my hostess. We had a half an hour just chatting, and we'd been talking a while. She said, Dr. Howard, please read for me. So I did, Alex. I gave her a quick reading, about 2 minutes. She said, she said, that's all true. But she said, no, I'm really going to put you to the test, Dr. Howard. I said, I want you to give me a negative reading right now on TV. Well, I looked at her, and I started tuning in, and I got a lot of impression. First of all, I could sense that she, shall I say, liked alcoholic spirits. Didn't want to say that. I felt later I found out she was a heavy drinker. Then I could sense, as I looked at her in the spirit, I could feel that she was a little careless, shall I say, in her personal, emotional life. Well, she was on her 4th marriage. And so but I finally got something quickly. It came to me. I said, I said, Miss So-and-so, I said, you look very cool, and you have good stage presence, but I said, you're frightfully nervous inside, and I said, there's an evidence of this. Under your clothing, you have some kind of severe skin condition. She laughed, said, Doc, she said, you hit it. She said, pointed to her chest, she said, I'm taped all across. She said, I have shingles. Well, now, there I could say that. See, you have to be careful in the handling of negative things, and so as not to reflect on people's character. And I could get your station some beautiful lawsuits,
Oh, yeah.
which I don't intend to do. So I do try to censor myself. Of course I do.
Yeah.
But I have to be careful. I give a command. I program, as it were, my superconscious mind.
All right, let's have a break here, and then Dr. Holloway will be tuning in on some of you people. Our number is Jackson 42911.
No, madam, but you were saying...
I do all my shopping at FedMart, Doctor.
May I ask why?
Because I save money. Lots of it.
What do you mean lots of it? I mean, what, a quarter? $1? $18 million?
Last week I did my weekly shopping at FedMart. I saved $2.31 on a stretch bra, $1.54 on a Columbia LP stereo album. Bought a Westclock's travel alarm clock and saved $2.08. Saved $2.05 on Foster Grant sunglasses. With everything else I bought, Doctor, I saved $18.62 shopping at FedMart that day. It was like a beautiful dream.
Tell me, madam, what was your husband's reaction? I mean, did he believe this fantasy about FedMart?
Oh, he was out of his mind.
He was out of his mind.
Of course. With the money I saved, I marched right back into FedMart and bought him a sewing box.
Crazy.
No, he's just a little odd.
Save on everything from jewelry to furniture at FedMart. There are now 4 FedMart stores in the Houston area, one at 2323 Wirt Road, corner of Hempstead. In a moment, Dr. Holloway will give some readings.
Sunday. KILT presents the annual end-of-school show at the Sam Houston Coliseum, starring Jefferson Airplane.
Don't you want somebody to love? Don't you need somebody to love?
Plus the Pozo Seco Singers.
I miss your loving feeling.
The 5 Americans.
It's all right. It's all right.
Plus Neil Ford and the Fanatics and the Fever Tree. Tickets for either show, 3 or 8 p.m. are only $1.50 and available now at H&H Music downtown on Gulfgate, Al's Records in Sharpstown, Lou's in Meyerland, Record Gallery in Town and Country Village, Tally's Records on West 43rd, Tape City at Louisiana Jefferson, Post Oak Music, 5302 West Durham Drive, and the KILT Studios, 500 Lovett. Be at the Sam Houston Coliseum Sunday. The annual KILT End of School Show for the Houston Farm and Ranch Club. See Surrealistic Jefferson Airplane.
You won't find it marked on the calendar, but it's that time of year again. The time when the world warms up to the idea of a fresh and frosty glass of Schlitz beer. So this is no time to be out of Schlitz, and your neighborhood store knows it. That's why they're featuring a special display of Schlitz with a golden sign that says, "Notice, we are not out of Schlitz, are you? Don't be out. Stock up now on the most carefully brewed beer in the world, Schlitz of Milwaukee."
My name is Alex Bennett. This is the Alex Bennett Show. Our number is Jackson 42911. Our special guest is Dr. Gilbert N. Holloway, who is a metaphysical teacher, and he claims to have the power of ESP, and he says he can do it over the telephone. He can more or less figure out what kind of a person you are. Let's see if he can do it.
Alex Bennett, may I help you?
Yes, I'm going to ask Dr. Holloway something.
Yes.
Will you hold a minute? Alex, may I give a couple of rules here, suggestions to our listeners? Here's my suggestion. Now, when you call in, you can either ask me a question on the subject of ESP, and I'll be glad to answer it, or if you want me to experiment with you personally, just say to me, "Dr. Holloway, would you please tell me something about myself?" Now, if I don't hear you well, I'll have you repeat that, because that's my only contact with you. Then I will give, for a minute or minute and a half, a stream of ESP impressions about you. Now, when I'm through, Alex, then they go to you, and I would suggest evaluating in this way. Give an approximate percentage evaluation. Is 100% true, 90, 80, 50, whatever, and then mention 1 or 2 or 3 hits, plus anything else that Alex may want to ask you. Now, remember, I cannot
not give individual prophecies against the code. Don't ask me if you're going to get married tomorrow or if you're going to make a lot of money. If you come down to Texas State, I'll go into that, but I cannot do it on radio. But I will tell you about you, or I will answer questions about ESP. Or thirdly, if you want to give me the name and address of someone somewhere in the world, I will go there in the spirit, experimentally, as all this is, of course, and I will tell you about it. All right, my dear, proceed.
Dr. Holloway, will you please tell me something about myself?
Yes, let me hear your voice once more, please.
Dr. Holloway, will you please tell me something about myself?
Yes, you're a very sympathetic person. You see, the first thing that I see as I contact a person is the aura or mental field. Colors, symbols, conditions therein. Your auric field is mostly green. You love nature. You are interested in the healing arts. You have strong healing magnetism. You make a very good nurse. You like to work with people. The maternal nature is well developed. There's an aspect here for 3 children in your life. You are physically strong and active. You like to move about as much as you can. You had a slight fall or nearly fell, and you wrenched your back a little bit. I feel a little bit of soreness in the back area with you, and I see you kind of bending and working this out. You do not, how shall I say, you're a hardy individual, and you don't honor pain very much. You go right ahead and work something like this out. There's a financial problem here. I can see 2 or 3 bills that must be met around the first of the month, and I think you will. There's one item about $45, $50 especially that seems to annoy you. I see you looking at a very beautiful sunset or some unusual solar condition. And also, too, I'm going to characterize you the solar disk because you're a person whose best hours in the day are in the morning from about 7:15 to noon or 1 o'clock, and you get a lot done. Your mind is clear and you're active and vigorous at this time. And also, I see you taking steps to bring in some additional income or additional money because there's a lot of expense in the family, and if you can bring in an additional $25, $50 a week, this will be helpful. And I see you endeavoring to do this and planning to do this, or possibly more, as soon as possible. One other thing, at times you desire to leave Houston. I don't see you doing so except on a trip, which I would see coming up in about 3 or 4 weeks. I see you going out a couple hundred miles, I do believe. This is Dr. Gilbert Holloway, touching you experimentally with ESP on the Alex program. All right, how close was he?
About 90%.
About 90%. Are you a nurse or anything like that?
Yes.
You are a nurse.
Yes, sir.
How about that pain that he...
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely correct.
Did you have a fall?
Well, I was exercising and I sprained my back and I had to sleep on a heating pad for a week.
How long ago was that?
That's all. He's about 90% correct.
How long ago did you have that fall?
Let's see. About 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm. I see. Do you have financial problems?
Somewhat.
Some bills that have to be met?
Well, spend it on vacation and let them go.
I see. Are you planning going away, leaving Houston, or
That's
what?
right. We've been thinking about leaving, but we didn't know whether we wanted to leave or not. That's right.
All right. Very good. Thank you for talking to us.
Okay.
Alex Bennett, may I help you? Hello.
Hello.
Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Would you like to, what would you like?
I would like to talk to Dr. Holloway. Dr. Holloway, could you tell me something about myself?
Well, you know, Alex, now having made a successful demonstration, I think I should retire for the evening, shouldn't I? This is nice being here. No, keep going. Getting the goods on you. Well, okay. I'm with you. I'm just kidding a little bit. All right, my dear lady. Now I'm with you. You see, what I do, and Mrs. Bennett is here, and she's my monitor, and I'm not in a trance. I don't think that Alex is. Are you awake over there? You are. Yes. Yeah, I'm awake. All right. Now, seriously, let me hear your voice. And by the way, the smoke bothers me. It is true. The cigarette smoke attenuates my ESP, if you don't mind. All right, dear, let me hear you.
Dr. Holloway, could you tell me something about myself?
Once more, quickly.
Dr. Holloway, could you tell me something about myself?
Yes, your aura or mental field is blue. This tells me you are an intellectual, mental type. You do a great deal of thinking, studying, reading. Your type of mind goes into teaching or into, you go into business, office work, something like this. You have dexterity. I hear the rattle of a typewriter, and I see the symbol of Mercury, which is a symbol of communication of ideas. And this relates to you in some definite way. You're rather a nervous person, rather apprehensive. You have overcome anxiety tendencies. Sometimes they reoccur, but basically I see you through the practice of a spiritual, religious, metaphysical faith. You are in better condition inwardly than you were, let us say, about 4 or 5 years ago. Now, this is a metaphysical term. I see you in what we call a 7 vibration, which means that you are inclined towards spiritual things, and there's an intense desire to experience reality. It's all very well to hear what Alex might say or I might say, but still, you're the sort of person, having heard other people, you'd want to go into the closet, as Jesus said, and you'd want to experience reality yourself. yourself, and I would see you doing this. You are also creatively inclined, and sometimes with your eyes closed, you see pictures in the frontal part of the head here, and what is called, what the yogis call the third eye center. And I can see you at times sitting with eyes closed or lying down, and these designs and geometric patterns, colors and so on, seem to move through the mind, and I would see you desiring to cultivate this and make this more precise. You had a respiratory difficulty at one time, possibly a slight tendency toward asthma, and even now, at times, I do not feel that you get enough oxygen, and I can see you breathing deeply, and if you're in a room where too many people are smoking, this would bother you. You possibly have a tendency, a slight allergy toward smoke, something of the sort. At least I feel, not a major, but some degree of respiratory or breathing difficulty at times as I am with you. I see a new car here, too. It's a medium-priced car. Looks very nice and shiny. I don't know if it's a recent acquisition. Maybe it's in your mind, but I would see improved, better transportation for you and your loved one. You're a very feminine person. You are not aggressive, but you have a quiet persistency that tends to draw to you the things that you really desire. And you recently, I would say within the past year or less, have made some kind of a demonstration, as we say in metaphysics, in your personal and emotional life. And I feel you satisfied and pleased about this. The last thing I have time to say to you is that you sit quietly at times, very quietly. I go into the silence with you, and I feel as if I am hearing like the voice of the silence, or something very quiet and very beautiful, and you're trying to go into this interior state more often because it seems to yield some kind of beautiful results for you. This is Dr. Gilbert Holloway with Experimental ESP for you on KILT Radio. All right, how was he?
Well, of course, there are a lot of things I'm sure that he said about me that I don't recognize in myself. Maybe after I thought about it for a while.
All right, well, not to give him the benefit of the doubt, what percentage would you say was on the nose?
Well, I would say at least, 85, maybe 90%.
What especially hit you as being right? Do you have asthma?
No, I don't have asthma, but I do have, I have a problem at times of not being able to get my breath. I have thought probably it was because I am nervous, as he did mention. And,
do you do a lot of reading?
I do quite a bit of reading. There were several other things that at the first that he did say, too, that were very true. I can't read.
You said you were a creative person.
Well, not necessarily.
But you would say it was about 85% correct.
At least 85%.
All right, thank you for calling.
Thank you.
Can you take another one, Doctor?
Alex, have you rigged all these calls for all relatives of yours?
I haven't rigged these calls at all. No rigging at all. Okay, here we go again.
I have that for the skeptic.
Let me have a little break here, and then we'll come back so we don't have to break into the middle of a call. All right, our telephone number is Jackson 42911.
Alex Bennett, may I help you? Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
May I speak with Dr. Gilbert Holloway, please?
Yes, ma'am, I'm with you.
Dr. Holloway, would you tell me something about myself, please?
With permission of my host, I shall be glad to do so. Let me see, your voice is my point of contact with you, dear. Let me hear your voice once more.
All righty. Dr. Holloway, will you tell me something about myself, please?
Yes, ma'am. I see bright orange, yellow in the auric field. You're a gregarious person. You meet people easily. You like to reach out to them. You are persuasive. You speak a great deal. You use your voice a lot, and you're on the telephone quite a bit as well. And you communicate, and you can be very forceful and very aggressive. And you were that little bit more that way a year or two ago, but I see you trying to tone this down. But still, when you get excited, you're a powerful individual. You have leadership ability here and power to influence through your voice and through your thoughts. And I can see you, getting very excited in the forthcoming campaign. 1968 is going to be a very exciting year for you. Some of the things you said tonight, they got you kind of excited too, and you like to think about this. You love constructive discussion. You love dialectic in the Socratic term. You like the contrast of ideas, and you enjoy this program. You enjoy Alex and his circumlocutions and difficulties and problems here because this to you is stimulating. And while you don't agree with him quite a bit, still you approve of this sort of approach is my feeling with you. You have a tendency to gain weight easily, and I think also a tendency to retain excess fluids in the tissues, and your physician probably would put you on a low-salt diet, and particularly with warm weather, and this is a human situation here in Houston, would tell you not to drink too much pop or coffee or whatever else. You'd have to watch the fluids in the body, or you could easily gain weight therefrom. You have a very positive philosophy of life. You've had to overcome many things. There's a condition in your family now that's rather difficult, very touchy, very delicate. I see you trying to handle this, and you long ago learned the lesson of positive spiritual consciousness, and I see you holding to this. You've also had to assume the responsibilities of a man in a certain way at one time in your life, and you still carry, I believe, more than the average lady does, as I sense this with you. Lastly, some unusual things have happened to you spiritually in the last year or so, and many of the metaphysical ideas that I voiced, and I think you would say, yes, I would believe that, or I believe that to be possible, and I can see you reaching out in meditation and reflection, sort of as Marcus Aurelius did, into some kind of higher plane of consciousness, which you are trying to reach experimentally yourself, and I believe you will. Your eyes are bright, they sparkle, and when you're animated, they flash, and there's a strong force here. When you were younger, you would lose your temper quite a bit. It's under control. Now, only occasionally do you give way to wrath, as I sense this. And last thing, I see 3 or 4 books coming to you, some of them loan otherwise, and you tend to devour some of them very quickly, and your mind is continuously working on new ideas, and you enjoy the stimulation of this. This is Dr. Holloway touching you with ESP on KILT.
All right.
Hi.
How are you, Fatso?
You're right. I would say he is about 95% right. I'm shocked. I do like to meet people. I am rather aggressive. I teach school, so I suppose I use my voice quite a bit and try to persuade. I do gain weight terribly easy. I do take diuretics for tissue, water in the tissues. The only thing is there's no condition in my family that I'm aware of that is difficult, and I have never had to assume responsibilities that a man might. I do work, of course, but I've not had any great responsibility.
Also, one other place where he was wrong. You hate my show, right?
No, I love it. I love it. But he was wrong because I do agree with you most of the time.
Oh, okay, good.
I thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night.
Alex Bennett.
Good evening, Alex. I'd like to talk to Dr. Holloway.
Yes, sir.
This is Dr. Holloway?
Yes, I'm with you.
Doctor, could you please tell me something about myself?
Yes, I'll be glad to experiment. Let me hear you once more.
Dr. Holloway, could you please tell me something about myself?
Yes, I will. You are a young man, I would say in your early 30s or thereabouts. You are, I think yourself, either in the media or have been. You know a lot about advertising, promotion, public relations, radio, TV, contacts, etc., etc. You have a lot of contacts here. I see you driving down the Southwest Freeway and admiring the buildings and the whole thing and the growth of Houston. You get a thrill out of the dynamic that is in the city, the dynamism that is here. And you in some way aspire to be an ever greater part of this. You are an aggressive individual. You go right out after the business. You don't mind stepping in strongly. And you were taught this. I see an older man, whether your father, uncle, some man this some years ago, he taught you to shall I say, go out with strength and know your stuff, as the saying goes, and then move in rapidly and strongly and seize that which belongs to you. And I see you doing this. You have some technical knowledge. In fact, to you, it's almost a fetish to continuously be informed. And I can see books and magazines and reports and all sorts of things around you and digests of them. You also remember what you hear, and you remember conversations, and you remember certain types of radio programs that are informed. This is continuously flowing into your mind, and you have a good memory, and you're desiring to develop it even further. You're also inventively inclined. Your soul vibration number is 1. Metaphysically, which makes you independent, it makes you inventive, you have strong originality, a desire to have your own business or department, and as you get older, I see you increasingly independent. You admire some of the great tycoons of Houston and Texas area here for what they have built, and you desire in your own way to do this. Again, the symbol of Mercury is very well aspected. I see quite a bit of travel for you, and I would see at least 2 trips by airplane out of this area within the next 3 months. One of them a business trip, the other one seems to be a combination of business and pleasure. And also, too, you have contacts out on the coast. I would see you flying all the way into California. I would see you also in New Orleans and also up towards Chicago and other places as well in these contacts. You bought a new suit very recently. It's quite natty, too. Just a slightly different, something different about the lapel, and maybe it has an additional buttonhole, something like that. Something different about the front part of your suit, and I see you looking at this and the lady, and I see a very attractive blonde woman. I presume this is your wife. I don't want to embarrass you, sir. I think it is. And you have, how shall I say this? You are a connoisseur of nice-looking lady.